the main thing is you need to get people to understand why that you're doing what you're doing. That's the biggest thing. And same with an artist. People are gonna follow your journey if they understand why they're following it. If they don't understand why they're there, a good song is a good song, but even a good song, people will then turn to the next artist that has an equally good, if not better, song.
It's getting stronger, and this fire is getting wilder, and this choir is getting stronger.
Welcome to the Musician Secrets podcast. Today I have George Holliday with me. I'm freaking out and I'm just fangirling a lot because you're a producer, you're a songwriter, you're the founder of Made on the Road, which we'll talk about as well later on. You've supported musicians like J.P. Cooper, A.J. Brown, Lionel Richie. I can't even.
Lionel Richie.
Oh yeah, I'm like, how?
It's a big one.
Woo! That's yeah. Those are some big names. Yeah.
A lot has happened. A lot has happened, and actually, we'll get into it. But like, it's a previous life that brought everything to this moment here, to where we are. So, you know, playing for AJ Brown, and that was all through like Instagram and like trying to just meet people through Instagram, and then suddenly playing with AJ Brown, warming up the crowd for Lionel Richie. It's like crazy, and then that was actually a really big chapter change for me, that gig, because that was like the last professional gig that I did when I then moved into this world. So I was like, what a way to go, like let's support Lionel Richie as the final gig before switching to producing and songwriting. So yeah, it was cool.
Oh my gosh.
But thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to say that. Thank you for asking, because finding me through a song that you loved and then now we're here is kind of what we all dream about as like songwriters. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I feel honored. Like, thank you so much. So yeah, just run through the process then. Like, what got you into producing or songwriting, and like what got you like working in like the music area, and then obviously to now to Made on the Road and everything.
Cool. Let's get this in a nutshell. Let's see how quick
I know. Like, take 20 years of your life and compress it into like
bang it straight.
10 minutes.
Okay, so I started playing piano when I was 7, so performing kind of started really early on. And I was always a really nervous performer, so I'd never wanted to get up and play, even in front of the family at Christmas. And then when I was a teenager, I must have been about 14, and set up a band with some friends, and then we started performing. And I went from like being really shy to then being like frontman, singer and piano player like in this band. So that taught me a lot really early on things like how crowds listen to music, what goes down well in certain different situations. Like if you've got a sat down audience, I learned really quickly you can get away with more ballads and you know, more intricate music. Whereas if people are up dancing, they just want to dance. They don't want to listen to piano music that's ballads.
Dance music,
yeah, definitely. So I clocked onto that really early. I tuned in on that and started then recording when I got my first laptop. And I think, I must have been like 16 or something. I got my first laptop and started recording.
Wow.
And we actually found the first CD that I made this Christmas with my family, and we were listening. And although, like, you know, the mixing is awful, the recordings are awful, but the ideas were clearly there. And actually, I could already see some of my personality in those recordings as like as a songwriter. So it was really cool to look all the way back 10 years and still hear what I hear now in the music. So then skip forward, to make a living, I was performing, I was doing, you know, weddings and that side of music, but then also playing for a lot of artists that I was writing music with. And I was really pushing that on my Instagram, hence AJ Brown getting in touch. And same with, JP Cooper. His name just blanked because it's like AJ Brown.
Yeah,
JP,
it's like
it's all initials.
Short, the initials.
Yeah, so and JP literally called me. He was just like, hey, it's JP. And I was like, JP who? And he was like, JP
like
Cooper, I need a keyboard player.
Oh my God.
Simple as that. So that was really cool. And I was doing like vlogs on YouTube. So that was really cool that he'd like seen some of those things. And and then, so that was 8 years of performing basically. I can't believe it was that long, but it was 8 years, and I was starting to feel like performing just really wasn't like the heart of what I wanted to do. And I wasn't saying that it would never come back to being that, but in that moment I was like, songwriting and producing is just the bit that gets me excited. Like I do the gigs and then I come home and then I start producing, and that was how I felt. So my parents have always said, like, if you want to do something and if you feel like you need to make a change, don't wait for what will feel like the right time, because that time never feels right. To jump into something scary never happens. So oh, I lost. Have I lost? Oh, you're back. Sorry, I got low power. So I spoke with them about maybe moving and traveling a bit more and getting into, like, because as a piano player, I was like, I can't just put a guitar on my back. Like all your guitars, I can't just put them on my back, get on a plane and go sit on a beautiful lake somewhere and write a song. So I was trying to work out how to do that. And then the hashtag van life started trending on Instagram. And I got really hooked into van life, which was just people traveling the world in vans, living full time and seeing the world. And I was like, I could do that. I could put my keyboard in there and I could just put a hammock up and sleep. And then my mum, who was the most sensible person ever, she'd suggest, you know, why do you want to live in a van? She'd support it, but as in, you know, she'd be thinking about all the health and safety. And then she found this huge 10-meter long truck that would need a whole different license to drive. And she said, I know it's crazy, but I saw it and I couldn't resist showing you. So a week later, we went to see it a week later. I took her with me and we decided, like, well, I just stood in here and I was like, this is the one. I could do something with this. So put a deposit down and bought it. And then everything changed then. I realized that, you know, gigs were only going to be happening for the next 6 months whilst I built this van, and then that was it. I was off, which is when the Lionel Richie. So I was building this bus as the Lionel Richie show was happening, and I actually did a YouTube video at that gig, which I'll send to you. Talking about the van and talking about everything that was going to happen, and saying how many years it got to this moment, and now it's going to all change again to something completely different. And now the chase happens. It's begun again for me to be a songwriting producer and try and get to a level that I'm proud of, which I already am kind of at that level. So skip forward, and this is now my bus and my studio and where I do all my writing, and travel all around Europe meeting amazing people on the road. So that's like the nutshell.
I mean, because I started to watch your videos on YouTube, and they're so addicting. I just like watch the next one, watch the next one. Like it's so cool. Like everyone that's listening should definitely go and like watch the videos, because they're awesome, and everything will make more sense as well. Because we won't have time to cover it all in this podcast, unfortunately. But I just
part two.
Yes, let's do that for sure. So what do you then really, because you have to like really minimize everything, so you only have everything in the bus that you really actually use and need. So as a producer, what does that, you know, come down to basically, because you can't have like that fancy studio, right? So what do you really use?
Cool. I mean, great question. Studios generally, the size of a studio is mainly the rooms, right? So they've put so much sound treatment in to make it sound a certain way, and when you actually just look at the basics that's used every single day, it can fit on one desk. And we're in a lucky time now where, you know, you can do most of the things from your laptop. There are plugins, there's software out there that replicates what these huge studios were doing, that, you know, I couldn't have done this 20 years ago. Because, I mean, power intake for one. You think of those huge desks, how much power. I'm running off batteries and I'm running off the sunshine, you know?
Wow.
So for me, that wasn't an option. So I just kind of took advantage of where technology was, which was mainly laptop, interface, and headphones. But I've got speakers on here as well, and yeah, you can just add as much as you want. I started then working with Aston microphones, so they sponsored us. they initially gave us loads of equipment, and then later on we started working together. Yamaha gave me a guitar, which was nice to take onto the road, but it was like working out how can I keep it really minimum. So actually in my bag, I've got my bag down here, I always carry around my Zoom recorder, and then as I'm traveling I just capture sounds just like everywhere.
Nice.
And then those just go into the productions bit by bit. So kick drum sounds and snare sounds, or like just things I can play with. So that was, I got much better at using that and utilizing what's on the road. So my basic setup is laptop, interface, headphones or speakers. Oh, my keyboard, of course. I need my keyboard in place.
Program, any DAW program, probably.
Put in?
DAW. As long as
Logic Pro. Yeah, Logic Pro X is what I use.
Too. Yeah.
And to be honest, that was it really. That's all I went on the road. I've collected bits as I go, and shakers and maracas. I've got shakers from like Cuba and all sorts of places. So you just kind of gather things as you go.
That's so cool.
Yeah, just bits and bobs, and then you just end up having to really hone in your craft, like with headphones and things, like mixes with speakers. Obviously, it isn't the most ideal environment, so I did take on a mixing engineer for part of that side of things. But I mean, things like mixing, the more you're in a space, you get to know the space and you get to know how songs sound there. So, you know, I believe that's a skill in itself.
Oh, that's cool. Because the introduction video that I watched, also on your website, because you have like, you get like artists on the bus, and you kind of write and produce songs on there, and that's so cool. But you basically I'm totally fangirling if you can't tell, but you said there's a 3-step process, and one is song planning, song creation, and then song amplification. So why did you choose these 3, and why are they important?
So those 3 steps, like if you break down the whole process of being an artist, like releasing music as a regular pattern, starting to turn that into a career, everything stems off those 3 things, I think, as part of a process. So from the initial concept, which I love, obviously being in the bus, traveling around, having conversations, going for walks, working out what is the subject of the songs, what is this going to do as the little tiny puzzle to the big picture, which is obviously the artist's career. So that was kind of like the stage 1, the concept, the initial spark, I guess, that gets something moving. The second stage being the production, and I think that ties in with the songwriting as well, because songwriting and production for me, they're hand in hand. They spark each other. Yeah, exactly. And then the final part, obviously getting the song out into the world, is a huge process that I think a lot of producers kind of miss out on. Producers like get to a point often and they'll hand over the files and they'll just be like, okay, cool, see you later. Good luck with it. I'll share it on my Instagram when you release it.
Exactly.
But for me, I'm like, no, that's part of the process. Like, we've gone through all of this thing to make this song. We've gone through all of this process to get to this point. Like, I'm not going to run now. I'm like here because I would rather be in the process of like 3 or 4 songs, so that we have development, and songs develop the more you work with people. Situations change, circumstances change. This year's been a great example of that. And I think that's part of a process. Like, as a producer, you're helping somebody get from A to B, and B might not be like stadiums and supporting Beyonce, but B might be like getting onto the local radio station, which means that can be the whole process for the first song. And then if you backtrack to the songwriting and the stage 1, if you know that that's what the end goal is, then that's where the journey begins. You then go back to the beginning and work out what song is going to do that for the local area. You know, what kind of music are they playing? What kind of artists are they supporting? And how does that tie in with the sounds that the artists I'm working with want to make themselves as well? You don't want to plan it too much so that it becomes too processed, I guess, is what I'm thinking. Like, you don't want to think, oh, the local radio stations love rock music, so let's make a rock song, when you're like an acoustic artist. That doesn't make sense. So it's just like weighing all these things up, and there's so many, it's an intricate process working with artists, because quite often artists don't even know how they want the end result to sound themselves, so you've got to go through that process with them. Exactly. And I don't know what the end result's going to be. You know, we both get ideas together, and I think that's almost my job, is to to pull out those things that you love about music and you love about life and the world and nature and everything else, and then pull that into a song. And I think those 3 steps kind of sum that process up.
Yeah. Where do you usually see where musicians or songwriters get stuck? Where, because you're working with so many different musicians, is there like a comment where, you know, okay, most of them will get stuck here, or is there not a common thread at all?
That's a good question. The first thing that came to me with that question was a lot of people get stuck on thinking about views, streams, and that side of the process. I really believe streams come with a good song, and even lots of streams doesn't mean anything anymore. You can have 1,000 streams and get 100 people from those 1,000 streams like knocking on your door asking when your next gig is. And that's a career in itself, right? So if you've got 100 people if you've got 1,000 people spending £100 on you a year, that's £100,000 as a business. So why chase, you know, 1 million streams when all you actually need is 1,000 people that you could probably get out of 10,000 or 100,000 streams if the game that you play is right, you know? So I think that's the thing that people get stuck on, is the thought of, I need 1 million streams from this song. And once we've got past that and we're like, no, 10,000 is enough if you've got everything else around it to go and support it. So I think that's probably my answer. I know that's not like the stuck that maybe you were thinking, but that was the first thing that came to mind.
It makes sense, because that's what I thought a lot until I like got into the marketing stuff of music. Because you know, I studied popular music performance. I studied that in Birmingham, and then I finished my degree, and then I was just like, now what? I know how to be a musician and a songwriter, but I don't know how to make music. And that's where I kind of got into that marketing aspect, exactly what you said in the beginning. Like a lot of musicians and producers, they say, okay, I wrote the song, or I produced the song, and now what? Like, you were just like, okay, I'll post it on Instagram and see what happens. But nobody really knows how to market, and nobody told me that. And I'm like, duh, like, of course. And that's when I learned, like, what we think what we need is most of the time not really what you actually, you know, have to achieve. Like you said, sometimes like 1,000, if you have 1,000 super fans, like in marketing we call it the hot market, if you got just 1,000 of them, and they buy every album you put out, they go to every gig you watch and buy the merch you put out and whatnot, like you can make a living off of that, no problem. You don't need that stadium to sell out, and you don't need, you know, all that craziness around it.
And the numbers are quite, the numbers fascinate me, because, you know, we're talking 1,000 people spending £100, so that's £100,000, which is so much more than anybody needs to live on a year. So even if I said to you, you know, I could make you £10,000 this year in music, all you need is 100 people spending £100 on you this year. So that's maybe 2 gigs, a couple of bits of merchandise, and maybe 2 EPs, something like that. And that could be part of a campaign, that could be a fundraiser. You might even have just a super fan that just wants to give you £100. They get unlimited everything for a year. But if you get 100 people doing that, that's £10,000. And I'm like, wow, okay, so now we can start building off that. And I think most musicians could live off £10,000 if they really wanted to, if it meant that it was, you know, full-time music. I think people, you know, could use that as a starting point for sure.
That's a good idea.
I find it fascinating.
I've never thought about that. Like, if you just be like, you just give me £100 or whatever, your euros, dollars, whatnot, and you have unlimited stuff for everything for an entire year, and you have like even just 500 people do that, 500 to 1,000, like,
it's crazy. And then you start breaking it down. So 100 a year, break that down to, what's that, like £8 a month? So if you can get somebody subscribed to you for £8 a month, and you can get 100 of those, then there's your 10 grand a year. And all you've got to do is make content, keep them happy, like keep it exciting, and when you're earning money off it full time, you've then got the time to make it exciting, because you're not doing the day job, you're not doing, or maybe you're doing a part-time job if it's 10,000 a year, but you've then got the rest of your week to work out how to make it exciting to keep people there. So and then that makes it more interesting for me, coming back to the production and songwriting, because then artists have more time to enjoy the process, be more creative. Like, let's hit the road for a week and just see what happens, because you don't have that full-time job anymore. And that, so it all trickles down to like to where I come into the process, you know. And that's why I think it's important to have those conversations. Like, I'm not a marketing person, I'm not gonna you know, put all of your schedules together, but I want to be there in those conversations, because it all still again trickles back down to me knowing the bigger picture and making the right music for that plan and that picture. Hence why I love being on the bus, because then we can do it together whilst traveling. It's just like, it wins.
It's like the coolest concept ever. I just still can't handle it, but what's like the biggest misconception you would like to resolve, or like just like resolve, that you see in the music industry, like that a lot of new people, like new musicians or songwriters come in, and what do you think is the biggest misconception you see in the music industry?
Can I replay the streams card? The million streams card? No, I won't do that. I won't do that. Biggest misconception.
Yeah.
I think the biggest misconception is how much work is needed to go into making some movement in the industry. I don't want to say like to making success or streams or radio, like just to make movement in some kind of a way takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to get it going, but it takes so much more to keep it going. And I think it's very it's very underrated on how much time has to go into something to keep things moving. The rewards are amazing. You know, the rewards of keeping something moving is amazing. It means you can do it full time. I'm full time making music and having great conversations with yourself. And, you know, we've had some chat on Instagram this week, and, you know, it's all part of the bigger picture of making something full time. And I think that just requires constant thought. That's why it's so tiring, because, you know, you're lying in bed where most people have switched off for the night after work, and we're lying in bed thinking like, okay, cool, what could I post right now that would be inspiring, or something comes to you because your brain's just, I mean, I don't think about it anymore. I like to think that I'm sat there, and we had a little chat about when I went and did my journal the other day, and I was sat there and I was like, this would just be great to just encourage even just like 2 people to start journaling, because I really love it. I think it's an amazing process, and it just becomes like natural to do without really thinking. But that's tiring, because then you're constantly just on mode. You're just constantly thinking about what's next. So I think that is misunderstood. Not misunderstood, but you know, I don't think people realize quite how much goes into it. But again, if you love it, it doesn't feel like work, but it is just tiring. I do think quite a few people come into the process thinking, I'm going to release this song, going to get 1 million streams, and it's all going to happen. It takes so much time to get to that point, and the only way to get there quick is to pay for it, and they're not real followers, they're not real fans, it's all fake, nobody actually cares. To make people care takes a long time. People aren't just going to buy into you straight away. So that's the answer, I think.
It's a good one. I mean, there are many, of course, but like that was, you know, I think I went in with a lot of misconceptions, and I like having to convince my parents. I mean, they were very supportive of me going to England and studying music. I was like a last minute thing. I wanted to do something completely different, and then I'm just like, no, you know what? I'm actually doing this, and they're like, are you sure? And they're like, okay. It's and then when I actually got there, I was just like, oh, this is not what I thought it was, and this is not what I thought it was, and this is different, and you know, and this exactly what you said is like the students that went in with that mindset of it's easy and all I need is talent and I just need a good song. They were the first ones to go, but the ones that were like wanting to work hard and knew it was hard work and like stuck through it, they were the ones that graduated. They were the ones that actually made that network and had that support system. So I totally 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it's quite scary well, actually, no, I think every industry is kind of like this. If you think about people that start a business in retail, let's say, they open a shop, they think they can just sell stuff, put up an Instagram page, and it's just going to go bang, and people coming into their shop all the time. It's exactly the same with music. It doesn't happen like that. And your shop might not be in the perfect location. You might have to think about moving your shop, or you might have to think about changing your stock, like move with the seasons. It all kind of is the same, whether it's music, whether it's a shop, whether it's a cafe or a restaurant or a marketing business. It just requires a lot of time, and you need to the main thing is you need to get people to understand why that you're doing what you're doing. That's the biggest thing. And same with an artist. People are going to follow your journey if they understand why they're following it. If they don't understand why they're there, a good song is a good song, but even a good song, people will then turn to the next artist that has an equally good, if not better song. But if they stay with you, do you know Tash Sultana? Do you know the artist Tash Sultana?
I saw her live she was like my last concert I saw live.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So she's a great example, right? She was busking in the streets.
In Australia,
that's how everything happened for her. She had amazing songs, but she had amazing energy. The reason that a busker went to like huge shows was because people really believed in her love for music and the energy that went into it. And you can just tell she's really relaxed because she just knows what she wants. She knows she just wants to play music all the time, and you feel it in the music. It's infectious, and that's why people follow her. She's also very real. Like she's spreading so many great messages around the world at the moment, and supporting many great causes. So that's kind of the why. Like people are like, okay, so there's more substance there. But when people started seeing those viral videos online, it was addictive because it was so obvious that she just loved music, and I was just like fixed on it. I'm like watching a busker in the streets, and it's so hypnotizing that I then stay on Facebook for 5 minutes. Like that's the why. And then she just kept that moving and just stayed faithful to what her why was for making music. And she didn't go off and do the label thing that normally happens where all the music's completely lost in a different personality. Like I feel like she's rich. Yeah, she's changed. She's adapted. Like people are going to get bored if she stays exactly the same.
Exactly.
But she's stuck to the core of what her why is. And that's probably the biggest message. Probably the biggest message we'll have in this chat today is like people watching this, like, what is the why? Like, why are you doing it? And why are people staying there to like, what is the message you're spreading?
Exactly. Well, it's always the story. Like marketing is nothing else but telling stories. That's it. If you know how to tell a great story that encompasses why you're doing what you're doing, then that's it. That's all what marketing is. It's all about, if you want to evoke emotion, tell a story. Don't go and sell them on logically, like that's closing. A lot of people, we're getting into the nitty gritty here, but basically what I'm trying to say is it's all about the emotion, and emotion is created through a story. So if you want to convince someone to do something or follow whatever you're doing, tell your story, because that is
absolutely. And do you know what? The best stories are the ones that you think are so obvious that you don't bother telling them. And that's like over time things become, you just get used to things, right? I'm really used to living in this bus now. It's been 2.5 years. It's my daily life. And I get on a Zoom and people are like, where are you? Like, a business call. I'm sat there with a label or something, and they're like, your studio looks like a bus. Like, where are you? And then we get the whole, and I'm like, oh yeah, I live on a bus. I forgot to mention.
I forgot.
So I need to constantly tell myself, like, this is the story. This is it's it. And everyone has that. Everyone has their story and their thing that they think everybody's heard. But I will still be meeting people in 5 years' time that the story of what I've told you about how I got the bus is still going to be just as important to tell them in 5 years as it is to tell people right now. And that's the same with music. Is how did you get there? How did this song happen? Like, why is this album here? Exactly. Like, what else have you done previously to get to this album? Like, it's so important to say all of those things. So yeah, story, you're right. Story is the most important thing. And actually really small stories are important as well. The tiniest little thing can become a whole piece of content. around. I'm trying to think of something I posted the other day. We over summer got onto the playlist for Ireland's equivalent of Radio 1, like huge playlist.
Nice.
We were really happy about it. But the whole story of how that song happened was amazing. It was young and free, and it was really fun to then tell that story of, like, I went traveling with my friends and we hit the road, and I recorded guitar in Germany and recorded piano in Manchester and all of these things. And now it's like on Radio 1 in Ireland. And it went from just like a Radio 1 play turned into a whole story, and you know, the littlest thing can be turned into a great story. So yeah, if you're watching this thinking like, how can I turn today into a story? What did I do today? There will be a way to turn it into a story.
For sure. Or share someone else's story. It doesn't, if you think your life is absolutely boring and you don't have anything to say, which is not the case, I promise you, but then if you're not, you know, then use someone else's story, like Tash Sultana or whoever you're, you know, love or whatnot, then do that. So there are so many options.
100%. I fully agree. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of doing that now as well. Like,
that's all I'm doing.
For people listening to this, they're listening to your music, and they're getting to know more about you over every interview. It's really hard to say, over every interview. But you're telling other people's stories, and I think it's great. Where you would be out playing gigs, like now you're doing this podcast, and I hope it stays for a long time, because it's just this is the way to evolve in the world. Everything's changing all the time.
Gotta adapt somehow. Yeah, that was my, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, I started with my origin story, and there's a reason why, because some weird way people always connect and talk about, oh, I listened to your story, and I'm like, I recorded it over a year ago, and I completely forgot about it. But yeah, I watched this marketing dude, and he's like, just start with your origin story and then go from there. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. And for some reason it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with Young and Free, since you touched about on that, and that's the song I found you through, and I love it. So just obviously you kind of touched on the story, but there's something really cool happening with that single though, right?
Well, there's been quite a few. Which one are you thinking about?
Well, we kind of talked about something that you would like to share or tease.
Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing.
This year, despite a year being in the same place, has been just crazy. We got featured on like Lonely Planet this year. I don't know if anybody here follows all this. We got featured on there. The Insider in America. We got so many blog reviews this year, and it's all been around Young and Free. And actually, going back to the numbers thing, it's probably one of the lower stream songs that I've released this year, but it's the one that's had so much attention in terms of stories and people like really getting to know what I'm doing here. So it's actually been the most valuable song. So it's been amazing, but it's part of a bigger picture. So I'm dropping an album on the 1st of March, which has all of the rest of the songs that Young and Free is a part of. And I also released, I want to say 5, but it might be 4 songs last year as well, before Young and Free, that are also part of that same, journey and travel. So that's the exciting news. Is an album is coming out very soon, made on the bus.
That's so cool. I can't wait to hear it.
The thing that I'm like most nervous about is remembering to tell all the stories again when it comes out, because I've been telling the same story for like the last year and a half. And in a nutshell, when I started doing my YouTube videos again, I announced that I wanted to do an album for myself, because I'd done all these songs for other people and I wanted to do it for myself. Who wants to get involved? And that was basically what the video was. And then in the first week, like 60 people got in touch, and they were like, I'd love to be involved. I don't know how, I don't know what. I play guitar or I make food, like however, I just want to be involved. And so I got 60 people. It ended up being nearly 100 people, and I jotted all of their locations down on a map and just connected all the dots and drew a road trip around Europe. So I went out for 6 months, from the 1st of March to the 1st of September, and just traveled, meeting all of these people. Like I think it worked out about 2 people a week-ish, and then met more people on the road. And just wrote like a whole bunch of songs. And the thing I loved about it is that Young and Free started actually on my driveway at my parents' the night before I left. with with my songwriting buddy Isaac. I'd written a lot of stuff. We did some writing for Warner Chapel, and that's how we kind of really got writing together.
Yeah.
And we were just there, and it was cold, and we were excited, but also feeling a little bit sad that we were like leaving for a little while. I mean, Isaac wasn't staying for the whole 6 months, but even he was a little bit sad about the situation. So we started writing this song about feeling like kids, and you know, when you're younger and you just can't wait for a road trip, and just that freedom and feeling. And so then Young and Free started coming into play. But then throughout the tour, different parts of the instruments were recorded in different locations. So, oh, sorry, it's just saying I've got a low battery. So in different locations, different instruments started going down. So we did the piano on the driveway at my parents'. We then I went to Manchester, and there was a drummer I met up with. So he had like a storage container, like a shipping container. Yeah. So we did the drums in that, which was cool. And then we've got like synths were done in Germany, like the north of Germany. Yeah. I'm trying to think where everything was done. We did some stuff in Holland, in the Netherlands. So basically the songs just started being pieced together bit by bit as we traveled around. And what was also really cool is we were doing a weekly video. Yeah. And I always remember this story because there was a guy called Bram who I met through the tour. Great guy. And I'd recorded a song with a good friend of mine, Tom Copson, in Bristol in England. And obviously I'd shown clips of that song on my YouTube videos. Yeah. And Bram was like, I love that song. Is there space to do something on it? And this was like maybe 2 months later in Holland. So he, in that 2 months, become a huge fan of Tom Copson, listened to all of his music and loved everything he did. And then he had the opportunity then to play on a song with Tom singing. So we were like bringing people together in the most, and I had never even thought about that someone would be a fan of somebody else's music to the point they were like fangirling over Tom and like wanting to be on the track. And the next thing they've collaborated on a track together. So it was a beautiful way to bring people together through music and through travel. And although people weren't able to necessarily meet each other in that moment, they kind of were meeting each other through the songs, because people were hearing like the raw vocals as if they were stood in the room with the person of Tom, and then he was able to play guitar with Tom essentially. So it was really, really cool how it slowly pieced together. And that album's coming out on the 1st of March. Wow. Story people. It's like, just hooks you into gets you in. Wow. That's the cool thing, is what I've noticed is just go and do it. Just do it. Once you get moving, once you get started, you will meet the people. You will, like you said, like you had no idea what domino effect this would have, but it's happening. And the same with this podcast. Like I just started out of this pandemic because I was sick and tired of everyone telling me what I could and couldn't do. And now the more interviews I'm doing, the more I'm realizing like this is so much more than just me starting a podcast. And same here, like just go and do it. Like I've been waiting so long to start this podcast and I was just terrified. But once you just go and do it, it just opens up doors that you have never thought of were possible. Yeah, and I remember that it reminded me of a quote that I heard Will Smith say at one point, and he was like, the scariest things in life are the other side of fear. So when you're like scared to do the podcast, you just gotta jump in and do it. And then actually when you're doing it, you're like, oh, this is fine, it's easy. And meeting strangers becomes, you know, easier and more enjoyable and less nerve-wracking, and things come back from it, you know. I think I was watching a bit of an interview you did with Jeremiah, was it? Yeah, Jeremiah Higgins. I was watching a bit of that interview and I was like, wow, this is really cool. So like now I'm like more involved in his world, and just you just start to see all this, the web kind of come together. Wow. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me. This is awesome. I have one last question before I let you go. What advice would you give new artists or people that are trying to get in songwriting or production, or, you know, what advice would you give them? If your end result is to make a career out of it, don't think about the normal career things. So normal career things would be, what is the yearly salary?
Yeah.
What is my time schedule going to look like? What am I going to be doing every day? Because that's going to change so much. And you have to just go with the flow, and then everything else will happen. So don't like sit down and intentionally think of a way to make money. Just kind of observe, like see more. Like we're in this world and you're like, we're looking at everything, but like we're not actually taking that much in. And I was thinking the other day when we were talking about the journal, and I do that every day, and I really do love it, and I love the process of it, and I have so many conversations about it. Probably one day I will make my own journal, and that will just become something that I sell, and that will help with the pot of like how to make a career. But I'm not thinking like, what product can I make? I'm just doing what I love, and then everything happens. And I'm not just saying like make merchandise. If you relate that to like making music, don't think really hard about what song is going to be successful. Just write a song that you think is really good, and that song will make you successful, or that thought process will make you successful in various different ways. And then just to add on an extra little one into that is, what is successful to you? Like for me, it was traveling around making music since I was a kid. Traveling around making music was the thing I wanted to do, and I've done it for like 2.5 years. Like I need to change that goal now in life. Cool. So just work out what is successful to you, because it's not going to be millions of pounds in arena gigs. It will be something much closer to home and much closer to your heart that will make you feel good about your career and what you're doing. So that's what I'd leave by saying, I think.
Wow. No, those are perfect. I have nothing to add there. We'll let it sit. And then where can people follow you? So, I mean, this is great. So if people want to find your music, if they want to go and see, check out your bus and the stories behind it, where should they go?
Instagram is probably the best place to go first. So you can find us through Made on the Road UK, which is the bus channel, so you can see all the pretty pictures of the bus. Or George Jazzman Holiday. It's George Holiday with 2 L's. If you type George Holiday, you'll probably find me. And then if you can't find any links that you want, just ask me in the DMs, and I'll send you somewhere that might be helpful.
I'll link everything up as well. So your website, because I already went and checked everything out, and everything will be linked.
It's a really cool thing on the website. If people want to go into the bus, like Google Maps Street View, where you can walk around the street. Yeah, you can do that in the bus. So you can have a walk around in the bus if you want to.
I'll do
it's
that.
It's an old thing. Like it looks slightly different. We've got a different coloured sofa now, but you can still have a walk. It's still cool.
That's cool. I'll do that right after the interview. That's so cool. Yeah, so I'll link everything, so usually no one should have any problems finding you, because I'm a huge fan. I'm still red. So thank you so much, George. It was an absolute pleasure that you took so much time out of your busy schedule and squeezing me in. So thank you so much, and I love what you're doing. I'm already sold.
Well, hopefully someday then we can come and see where you live, because it's beautiful, and we'll make some music sometime.
Yes.
And we'll make it happen. You'll see the bus someday, I'm sure.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. Until then, all the best.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Musician's Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Alise Koa. I hope you got to learn something new about producing or songwriting or mental health when it comes to making music, the fears that most musicians have when making music. So everything that's behind the scenes, behind making music, you will learn it here, because I am basically talking to anyone that makes music all around the world. So I have a great privilege to learn all of that, and I can't wait to share it with you all. So follow this podcast if you enjoyed what you heard today, and go and share it with somebody that you think could enjoy this episode as well, benefit and learn from it. And as always, there's more information at alisekoa.com/podcast. Talk to you soon. Bye.